wasn't really about the win for me at that moment. It was about going to make the memories.
Yeah.
It was like, you know what?
Yeah.
This savings account, this retirement account, all of this doesn't really matter at the end of the day if we're not doing anything with it that we really wanted to do. And it was 2017 when I started just like preaching that. If not now, then when? If not now,
Welcome
then
to
when?
the Local Supports Local podcast. My name is Travis Chapman. I am the CEO of Local Mortgage in Memphis, Tennessee. Our podcast gives us the chance to highlight local business leaders that make a difference in our city. I recently had a chance to talk with my friend, Niki Berry of Berkshire Hathaway McLemore Co. Niki is a top performing realtor, but her story is so much more than real estate. Her mantra, if not now, then when, is a lesson for us all. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Realtors, it was kind of like, they all kind of serve different areas, and I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if that's true. It's like,
yeah, I only do this.
That I only do this.
Right.
Or, hey, Nikki, I didn't call you because I didn't think you'd want to come to Millington. Well, the reality is I kind of don't. But
yeah.
I mean, if it's a deal, let's go get it.
How do you fight? How do you fight that?
Well, so at the bottom of some of my stuff now, just trying to put all of West Tennessee and Mississippi.
Putting your geographic locations on your marketing.
But I mean, even like people that I acquaint with weekly are like, well, I didn't call you. I didn't think you would do that. Or like a lady who sent me her mother-in-law's listing last weekend. And she's like, hey, Nikki, my mother-in-law's listing is now live in Bartlett. Mm-hmm. And I was like, great. I said, thanks for sending. She's like, do you have any buyers for it? And I was like, not sure. I said, I've actually closed 7 this year alone in Bartlett. I'll have to keep that in mind. So like, I'm trying to respectfully respond. Like,
you don't want to say why in the world
did you not call me? Like, I acquaint with you weekly. Yeah. And like
somebody you're constant contact
you
with.
Get my mail.
Yeah.
Literally. Email, snail mail. And I'm like,
do you think you're in a position to ask?
With some people, yes.
Yeah.
And I looked at who those listing agents were, and I thought they've got history. Like,
right.
And it's interesting, though, because just last night, for the first time out loud, I said, I'm really okay now to not get somebody's business. Like, I'm finally at a place... and I don't know that it took time to finally get there, because I really haven't been burned or felt like I was backstabbed at all in this business ever. But if somebody doesn't want to work with me, I probably don't want to work with them.
It's probably not a good fit anyway. Yeah.
And even if it is a good fit, they had a reason for choosing that other person.
I forget that there are other mortgage people in town sometimes.
I do too.
Good. Good.
And I don't like working with them when I have to.
Well, you do have to sometimes. But it's interesting to see, like, why. Because I associate, and even being in the business and being around realtors all the time, I still associate, generally, realtors with certain types of transactions or certain types of clientele, which makes sense. They're going to work a certain sphere, a book of business, something that kind of naturally aligns with their personality and how they're building their business. So I do also, I have pigeonholed realtors in thinking, well, this realtor does this type of business, or they concentrate on this area of town. And I think that's true to some degree, but it doesn't mean that it's also limiting you to only that area.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how you combat that. But you definitely need to, because obviously, and I look at it, I can do a deal, quite frankly, we've got a 5-state license.
Right.
I can do a loan in Atlanta, Georgia, almost as easily as I can do one in East Memphis.
I'm working on you for Atlanta, for sure.
I'd like to get some more business there.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. It's not, which the way that things are now, as far as, the internet and how people transact and do business, it's so much phone, it's email, it's text. It's that constant communication. And as long as you're willing to do that, I think someone in Atlanta, for example, feels like they've got a local provider, or they've got a guy, they got a girl to do, their mortgage loan or whatever industry it is, that those connections can be made, and the geographic distance doesn't really matter. There might be a few things. I mean, we use local appraisers, we use local title companies, so having those connections, and it's not somebody you can, we can't show up to closing, for those kind of deals. But other than that, I mean, the transaction is just as easy. I mean, we just closed a couple of condos down in Florida, recently last month, and those deals were just as easy as ones we had in Collierville or Bartlett.
Sure.
So I don't know how you combat that though, but that is an interesting thing when you look at your business.
Yeah. So social media for me, which I'm not a fan of at all, really, but I do find that I have to use it for this business.
Of course, yeah.
So every couple of weeks, I'll just post everything that I have for sale. And I'll just do a little separate picture, so you have to click through my pictures to see everything that's on the market. And I don't want to pigeonhole myself to one particular price point or one particular geographic area, because I'm truly here to just serve whoever has the need.
Yeah.
And so my lowest listing right now is priced at $275. My most expensive listing is priced at $1.2.
Yeah. You've got the whole market covered.
I've got the market covered literally from High Point Terrace to Hernando, Mississippi to Piperton and everywhere in between.
Well, I think it's important to get those kind of messages out, and maybe using your social media to, maybe show yourself. And you're like me. I mean, we use social media because we want to use that platform. It's not naturally who we are, but here we are doing a podcast, and we're going to put it on social media. But I think it's also having, whether it's public or people you already know, see you in those lights and connect those dots.
Yeah.
So you ought to, next time you're in Hernando, make sure you're talking about Hernando and put something out there for somebody to see, because they may see and think that you're now the Hernando super agent.
Sure.
You can grow into that. I
gotta learn that.
What do you think about business-wise this year? Where do you think we are? It's August 2025. Where would you kind of give the state of the real estate market? Shelby County, you're now serving DeSoto County, broadly in our area. What's your take on kind of where we're at and where we've been and kind of where we're going?
You probably have the broader take on that, to be honest, just sitting as the lender and seeing multiple contracts come across your desk. But what I'm hearing from fellow agents is that for most, their business is slower right now. And for all of us as a whole, our houses are sitting on the market longer, and we're seeing a massive increase in days on market. And to help combat that with some of my sellers, I'm telling them that immediately at the listing appointment, because I think folks, especially those who are selling now, who purchased in 21 and 22, they're expecting the same results now that they're the ones putting the sign in the yard, and that's just not the place that we're at. And oftentimes that means having to tell them, you over purchased for what you have, and now for the neighborhood, you paid more than the house is really worth and most likely going to appraise for. Now we need to talk about what those numbers look like for you at the closing table.
How do we get out? Yeah.
And are you bringing money to the closing table? So I closed one last week, and they had to bring, their closing price was in the twos. Yeah. And they had to bring $11,000 to the closing table.
And this would be someone who purchased
in 2022.
Yeah.
These folks purchased in 22.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so they caught the top of the market.
Yeah.
If you look back and kind of correlate this to where interest rates were in 2022, I guess timing wise, I always kind of look back and think about it, but really 2023, just to give it a round number, is when rates really started to increase, and rapidly. Right. So if clients bought in 2022, more than likely they were going to be at the top of the market. And while we've had, I think, a little bit of home appreciation in 23 and 24, certainly not, to the point to where you can pay commissions and maybe pay some closing costs now, because that's another thing I do see from and I don't know from the technical aspect, but I feel like it's a buyer's market.
It's for sure a buyer's market.
Data on that.
I've been super vocal about that.
Yeah. Well, we are seeing closing costs. I mean, closing costs. are really being negotiated.
Yeah.
Incentives as far as whether it's paid in closing cost or rate buy downs.
Yeah.
Some type of incentive, price reductions to a degree. I still feel like that overall prices are somewhat stable, which is still surprising to me. I really would have thought that we would have seen some price deterioration from 23, 24 now into 25, but we really haven't. Prices seem to be
not as a
resilient,
whole.
right?
But those prices, like the margin of increase is minimal. So let me give you a couple of just facts that came out from like our city, our area. So Cordova, the increase from 2024 in homes that sold is 13.5%. The increase in that median sales price is only 2.8%.
So the number of units is up 13% from 23 to 24 in Cordova, but only
24 to 25 so far to date.
24 to 25, but only a 2.5 or so percent increase in home price, which makes sense. I don't feel like that we've seen, kind of comparing 24 to 25. I don't feel like we've seen much home appreciation, but we certainly haven't seen any deterioration,
hold on. Let me give you Cordova's numbers, which I know it's a totally different market.
No, was that Cordova you just gave me? Or?
No, I just gave you Germantown.
That was Germantown. Okay.
So let me give you Cordova. So there's been a minus 24.8%. So a decrease by 24.8% in 2025 versus 2024. In the number of homes sold, and a decrease in the median sales price of 1.9%.
Wow.
So that's pretty drastic difference. And we're seeing that in the pockets of the different areas of town, just kind of depending. Bartlett, for example, and you and I have closed several deals in Bartlett this year.
Bartlett's
Together,
been real hot
Travis,
this year.
we've closed 7 deals in Bartlett in just 2025.
I knew it was a lot. I didn't realize that we had that many in Bartlett. But
you're a numbers guy. I came with my numbers prepared for today.
Good for you. Good.
All right. So homes sold has been decreased by 18.8% in 25 versus 24, and the median price has gone down 3.2%. And I look at those price decreases, and I think that is the actual sales price that everybody would see online. Like, hey, this house sold for $300. That's not also showing that, well, you know what? These sellers contributed $15,000 in closing concessions. So really for those sellers, it was $275.
Yeah. Right. That's really interesting because we haven't really seen low appraisals.
Agreed.
I haven't really had a problem with low appraisals this year at all. I don't know that any other lenders really have either.
Agreed.
So it feels like that buyers and sellers are finding some of that negotiation in terms of, a small price decrease. But if you have somebody who has been sitting on the fence wanting to buy their first house, and home affordability certain houses challenges, we've talked about that at length. But where prices are today, where interest rates are today, had you waited from 23, let's say, to 24, now you've paid an extra 24 months in rent, you haven't picked up anything. You've not really gotten yourself in any better situation by waiting. There's been 2 years in that case of rent payments that are out the door. Rates are a little bit better from where they were the peak in 2023 and getting better. I do feel like that most of the consensus thinks that rates are moving in the right direction. I don't know that, how far down we'll end up going, but I think we're certainly moving in the right direction, and a lot of pressure on, the Fed to cut rates, the next meeting. So I think hopefully that will spur along some activity, but I think with all those statistics that you just provided, it should show buyers it is a good time to buy. You're seeing a little bit of dip in prices, not much, but in your case, what you mentioned is a little bit dip in prices, and in some cases, though, more transactions.
Correct.
So correct. You do have some buyers maybe coming off the fence. Our numbers are good this year. I mean, we're actually up. I think it's somewhere through July about 18%. So we're seeing some of that as well. So there's certainly more buyers coming into the market and taking advantages of, a little bit of ability to negotiate price, certainly getting their closing cost paid, and in some cases even getting the seller to pay for a rate buy down. So I think that those are, good things for buyers to realize, that continuing to wait even as rates go down, if rates do happen to get to 5.5% or so, what does that look like? I think some of those numbers
go crazy.
They turn back around, right?
Yeah. I think it does.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had, many buyers in the market, relatively speaking, over the last couple of years. It's been certainly a decrease. So you got to presume that there's certainly, the population's not gone down, right? So there's more and more buyers that are going to be sitting on that fence. So talk a little bit about inventory. What is that with inventory numbers? I know that inventory has steadily increased.
That's right.
Right? And so how has that maybe played a factor in these average days on markets, which we didn't mention a number there. Is it about 40, 45 days?
Oh, I'd say it's more than that at this point. I would say it's absolutely more than that. Okay. For the first time, I've had to sign a couple of listing extensions.
Yeah.
That's not fun. Because you sign them for a certain amount in a certain period of time, and then you think, I'm not going to probably get to that date. We're secured on this form, and you kind of file that form away. And then all of a sudden get this notification that you hadn't sold this house in that long. And I take that a little personally, quite honestly. It's like, wait, what have I not done to be able to sell this house? But with the inventory being increased, and I'm telling all of my sellers right now, your house needs to be perfection.
Yeah.
The best that you can have it to be, because these buyers who are coming into the market, they're comparing you to the very next one they're going to look at, and they're looking at multiple in the day. And if you didn't wow them with your front door open, then you're not probably in the running.
It's a good segue into we have seen a dramatic increase, I feel like, in contracts that may have some seller paid closing costs to begin with, but an increase in seller concessions at the point of the resolution for the repair resolution. I think that buyers are picking apart the house, as you mentioned, even through once under contract and with the repair inspection period. And I've regularly seen and had conversations with agents go, oh, well, how much more in closing costs can we get, right? Yeah. And in the next day or so, we'll get a contract addendum that's increasing, seller paid closing costs. So I think that's to your point, buyers are certainly scrutinizing homes, at a high degree and level, because they know that there are other opportunities out there.
There are. And if your house isn't even clean, I tell everybody, I'm like, make sure it smells clean, not like the wet dog.
Yeah.
And make sure everything is tidy and put away, because many buyers, they can't look past our stuff.
Yeah.
And that becomes problematic.
Certainly,
if they already have blinders
on. There's a real psychology to it. And as a seller, you got to remember the average showing. Of course, I've always heard some weird stories about, they stayed hours longer than their appointment window, and maybe that's a good sign in some cases, but as a seller, you got to remember, you've got somebody coming in your house for the first time. They are going to see multiple homes that day, more than likely, especially if they're serious buyers, and in that case, you have, I guess in total, you have a 45-minute window or something to wow them. But in reality, as we all know, the first impression rule, so as you mentioned, is when they walk into that front door, is it a place they can see themselves living?
And Travis, I tell my sellers, while they're standing on the front porch waiting on the realtor to unlock your front door, what are they seeing? Are they looking up, seeing that deferred maintenance of wood rot, or on the columns at the base where the rain is like saturated? Are they seeing that? Because if they are, that's an automatic first impression of this could be a no, because these sellers have deferred maintenance here. Where else do they have it that I can't see?
What am I not seeing? Yeah.
So I just think for right now, your buyers have got to have just spot on. And or I'm sorry, your seller's got to be spot on with their presentation of the home.
The psychology of it's interesting too. I think that's another thing about when you say, well, what else do I not see that might be wrong for this house? Because I think that from an inspection, and you, as you're representing buyers, you may have a take on this. When they're presented with, a home inspection report, as we all know in the industry, those things are 40 pages long. They are anything that it could be noted in those reports is going to be included, which they should be. Mm-hmm. But buyers going into that, especially if there's any apprehension at all, are going to pick that inspection report apart. Mm-hmm. And if they already have those negative concerns because they went to a house and they thought, well, let's see what the inspection report brings. If there's anything in that report, it certainly is going to be magnified if they already have that, negative connotation or worry that there could be something wrong with the house.
And I think that's preparing your buyers too, walking into that home inspection. Like, he's going to find stuff, and he's going to find a lot of stuff. But it is also his job to report on all of those findings. So I tell everybody, I'm like, you're definitely going to have an outlet that's got reverse polarity.
Right.
Most people do in their homes. He's definitely going to find wood rot. There's probably going to be a window that's painted shut. And just kind of preparing them for some of the things that is most likely going to happen. In business, I use an inspector, and almost every house, and it's kind of our running joke now, he'll tell me that the gutters are sloped improperly. Well, you know what? Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. Because if we call out a roofing company to inspect these gutters, he's got a different take on it, right?
Yeah.
So if I just prep my buyers and just try to buffer some of that panic that's going to happen when that home inspection report hits the inbox, then I feel like it's a softer blow so that we can really work through, let's look at the mechanical issues, not necessarily the things that are cosmetic or, let's look at big ticket items and go from there.
Well, transitioning a little bit, we talk about a little bit of the psychology of this. I feel like, of course, with your background and your psychology degree, tell us a little bit about how your particular background, and even going back to your pageant days, which Ms. Carville will certainly bring that up and make sure that we've checked that box. I had that on my list. But I find it interesting that some of that might later on in your life, as you've become a realtor, now play a part in your business. And those might be skills that you learned not that many years ago, but years ago that you now lean on.
It's been a long time.
That you've leaned on as a realtor.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I think just clear communication. Like, learn your buyers and learn your sellers, because we cannot communicate with everyone in the same way. They all need to be fed a little bit differently. Some of your buyers, for example, first-time home buyers, they're still drinking milk. They've never done this before, and you just kind of got to ease them into the process. And for most of them, they need to know just what is my next right step.
Right.
And then you get these seasoned buyers and sellers, and they automatically know more than me and you combined, and they're ready to just tackle us.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Sometimes with them, and I have one right now, direct communication is key.
Yeah.
And to the point where I had to say to a seller recently, if you don't go mow this yard, you will never get a showing. And I would never tell that to a sweet first-time seller who's just kind of innocent. I would say that, but gently. And I think that's the psychology of it, is just learning who you're sitting in front of and learning the personality of that person.
Certainly take different paths to get to the same place with different folks. And
because we're not the same.
No, we're not. We're not. No. And I think that is shaped, our buyers are shaped, whether they are first time and even first time home buyers. That's a broad blanket group. Everybody's not the same. And I think that one thing I mentioned in that I feel like you guys count on us for is to be able to handle your different types of clients and to be able to be consistent and to know, okay, if I'm going to work with, whether it's a mortgage company or any of your other vendors, that how they're going to handle my client and not have to worry about that, because we're
That's right.
certainly an extension, of you, and in a way that we want to make sure that how you handle your clients is consistent with us, and that your clients feel that natural relationship, that they do have a team, that they have a team that's going to handle their, because in many cases they don't know which questions to ask, and they don't know what the next right step is, and having that, being able to listen, being able to understand where a client is. And I usually kind of start my conversations in our biggest marketing thing right now with first-time home buyers is, let's just talk. Let's just talk. It's a 10-minute, easy, casual, relaxed conversation. Tell us kind of where you are in the process. You may be looking to buy next month. You may be looking to buy next year. Everybody has a different financial situation. They have a different credit score. They have a different budget. And really letting the client, kind of asking some leading questions, of getting the clients talking to you about what they're looking for and what they're trying to accomplish. And in some cases, that's real easy to go from A to B. And some cases, it's a little more challenging, and we've got to save up some more money, or we've got to, pay a debt off, or whatever the case may be. But trying to understand where they are and where they want to go is, it doesn't take very long. You just kind of have to listen to them and give them a little bit of a platform to feel like they're being heard, and feel like they can communicate that, and get, to ask the questions, and to know, and especially for first-time home buyers, to know that we've got their back, and they don't have to necessarily worry about the fact that I don't know which questions to ask.
True.
That whether it's Niki or Travis, part of my team is looking out for my best interest. And I think that's real important that comes through to the client, and especially that we're not trying to necessarily sell them.
Right.
And
we're just trying to help them.
Just trying to help them.
Right. Because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to just sell them something that they're not going to appreciate when it's all said and done. And your team does matter. And I've said that 100 times. I mean, we wrote an article to essentially state that. And like, the team is one of the most important components of that. So when I meet buyers and I know that I'm sending them your way, I go ahead and prep them for some of the questions that I feel like you're probably going to ask them, and just letting them know, hey, Travis is going to ask you very personal questions, because when it really comes down to it, money is still one of those topics that most people are not comfortable talking about. And in our business, that has to be 100% full disclosure, and they've got to share everything with you, from, hey, I've got this much in debt, to I still have, all of these extra college expenses, or whatever the case may be.
Everybody's got something. And
everybody's different.
Yeah, that's right.
So I go ahead and let them know that you're going to ask those questions, but I don't have to know those answers. And my job in here is to help them find the house. Your job is to make sure that they're comfortable with the budget, not to pre-approve them for, $100,000 or $200,000 more than they want to afford, but you're going to make sure that they're comfortable with what that monthly note for them could look like, to not put them in a bind.
That's one of the challenges, and I don't know if I do this wrong, and I do try to communicate this, but sometimes I will send a pre-approval letter. We'll talk about the budget and send a pre-approval letter, and I don't even know how other lenders do it. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but I don't feel like giving someone the max amount of their approval so they can borrow $500,000. If they don't want a $500,000 mortgage loan, I don't really see what the value that I'm providing them by giving them this higher number than what they intend to use. And so trying to kind of tailor that specifically to, okay, within a price range, what are we trying to buy? How much are we trying to spend? What is our monthly budget? And trying to tailor our approval within a range. And obviously we want to tell someone, hey, you're approved for X amount of dollars and you can't go a penny over that. Then obviously we've got to communicate that. But in many cases that's not necessarily the case. So we're just trying to really help them facilitate a transaction.
That's right.
Yeah, facilitate.
And the reality of that is, if you approve them for $500, they're coming to me and they're sending me a house that's $550. They're going to fall in love with it,
right?
Because there is a vast difference sometimes in just $50,000.
Yeah.
And then they're coming back to you going, "How can we?"
Yeah.
Not can we, but how can we?
Right. Right.
And at the end of the day, if they don't like that payment, who do they blame? They come back to me as the real estate agent, or could, and be like, "Hey, she sold us this house,
right?
But now we're in this uncomfortable spot."
Yeah. So with all that, coming back to a little bit of your background, because I want to highlight and mention some of the things that kind of led you to this point in your career. So you've been a real estate agent now 4 years. 4 years. I get that timeline roughly right?
So 4 years.
And you've done phenomenally well. You've grown in a market. I know you started when things were, insanely crazy. I guess 2021, right? So you had 2 years of very unnormal times. But now you've continued that momentum. Your business continues to grow, and I think it's something to hear how you feel like you have done that, and what parts of your background specifically do you lean on that have kind of helped you in this second career, third career, after raising your kids.
Right. So if we're looking back, I mean, now I'm kind of like, dang, I wish I'd gotten licensed well before now. But had I been licensed in 2019, then I already would have had my sphere set up, and I'd have been one of those gung-ho agents, writing 20 and 30,000 above ask in 21 and 22. But that's not where I was. Like 21 is when I got my license in mid-year. Yeah. So I closed only 3 transactions that whole year. Or no, I'm sorry. I closed 1 transaction that year, and then came in the next year starting a little bit more. But I never had to write any of those crazy offers. Okay. I mean, I just didn't know that, and that wasn't, I was watching people around me do that, but I didn't know that. But I think I don't know if it's personality or just being real with people. Like, I am marketing my business. I am trying to market my business for the stranger who doesn't already know Niki Berry or a friend of Niki Berry. And I want to also serve them and to be able to help them. And I think that's one of the key factors of me being able to grow and do, because when I really look at the transactions, it's not always in my sphere. I had this conversation recently with someone in my office, and I send out 350 mailers a month. Well, how many of those have I really serviced? And the number is honestly staggering, because I could have saved a whole lot of money. But how many of those did I service who were kind enough to refer me to a friend or family member? I'd have to go back and really dive deep and look into that, and I don't want to. But, the Lord has sustained my business. He has been faithful. He has continued to grow my business. I pray about my business every day. I write in a prayer journal every single day, and I'm very direct, and I outline exactly what my requests and petitions and increases are. And that's all I know to attribute that to is just the Lord.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I think too, though, you've been intentional about what you want from this business, and a couple things you said a minute ago about serving your clients and doing it in a way that is not about the next sale. Yeah. And doing the right things, and I've had separate conversations about whether it was circumstances of how do we, and maybe not even something big, but how do we take care of a certain client? How do we get them to where they want to be? Sometimes that takes that massaging, as you mentioned, and trying to make sure that we communicate that in the right way. But I think that comes back to consistently doing the right things. And I think there's a lot of realtors in town that share those values. And I think there's a lot of mortgage people in the market too that do as well. And I think we've got a good community of professionals that generally try to do the right things, and we kind of forget how many people it takes to actually close a real estate transaction, and how much working together that requires. And typically you're going to have, obviously you got a buyer and a seller. You're probably going to have two agents. You're going to have a mortgage company, you're going to have a title company, you got insurance companies and home inspectors, and the list continues to go on, and making sure that those people are all aligned with, yes, there's a negotiation between buyer and seller. And I always laugh this whole, idea that, we're going to really play hardball and use these. I don't think that stuff really works a whole lot of times. I think you have a buyer, you have a seller, you have a price point that they try to get to. I guess everybody wants to feel like they won any kind of negotiation.
That's right.
But there's a reality to the circumstances, and it's about putting buyers and sellers together. And I think having good agents in town that work together well and communicate well.
Answer the phone.
Answer the phone, yeah. And we have a buyer, we have a seller, and yes, everybody's got to represent their parties in a way that best suits and serves them. But they're just trying to get a deal together that fits everybody. Everybody has to have a little bit of win in most circumstances for a deal to get done. Otherwise, and I've seen that with buyers who, they go in and certainly want to lowball every offer. You're never going to win anything, and you're never going to, until you find the perfect home and you're just willing to pay for it at that point. And I guess that works out. But I think that's an interesting way to really kind of frame our overall market, and to think about it is how many players are in the market, and how it does take communication, not only with our clients, but with all the related parties involved, know.
And I'm probably the first player that those buyers and sellers meet.
Of course you are,
and then whoever I help direct them to,
you are,
is a direct correlation of my business. And I always try to frame and preface, when I refer to you, who you are, and my trust in you, and your team, your whole team. But then at the same time, when I'm texting you their information, because I know that you're going to make a contact to them, I'm telling you a little bit about them too.
Yeah.
And those personality types. And then that way, and I do that with every home inspector, every title company, because I want the inside people, if you will, to this transaction to know who they are also working with. And realtor to realtor, let's just be honest and let's have integrity. We don't have to be bulldogs in this business. We just need to have a conversation. It's really, at the end of the day, both of our goals should be to get them successfully across the closing line kindly. Because our buyers and sellers can smell commission breath a mile away. And I was told that my first year in the business. And I kind of chuckled, but it's so true. And realtors can smell when the other person is just trying to do that very thing. Let's get to the closing table.
Most of the mortgage lenders can too. We can figure that out. But so what do you feel like, I guess, going forward? What are your 2026 plans and goals? I know you're doing more social media. I know you're doing more videos, and we've worked on a couple of things like that together. What are your plans, and how are you tackling kind of the next thing of your business, as far as, are you trying to do more of the same? Are you trying to really grow in certain? I know you've got your Mississippi license, which is a new, I guess, market for you in a way. What does 2026 hold?
So any business coach would cringe at what I'm about to tell you, but I haven't thought a whole lot about 2026 because I think next right steps for me are just to take care of what I currently have on the table. And there will be no 2026 if I don't take care of 25 really well. So right now I'm incredibly heavy in listings, and with more listings than honestly I've ever had. I mean, it's a good problem to go have to buy more signs and key boxes. But in this market, it is tough being the listing agent and making sure that we are loving well on those sellers. So what would I love for the rest of 25 is to pick up some buyers. We would like that too.
I
know it. And I've been heavy before on the buying side and slower on the listing side. It just seems to be kind of how my business
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. If there was any rhyme or reason to it, we would all have books written on it.
Yeah.
But I don't really know. But for 2026, so I'm more than halfway to my annual goal for 25. Depending on how well we do that, then I'll set that 26 goal and
just kind of keep chugging along. Yeah.
Probably for a couple million more than the year before.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just kind of how I never want to go backwards, but in this business, I know I can very easily. But I honestly like where I'm at.
Well, good. I feel like that's a good thing about our business too, is that you can always go get more. I feel like whether you're a mortgage lender, whether you're a real estate agent. Now, I don't know that our pie necessarily is going to get bigger. I think that, it for the most part is what it is. And then maybe rates get, into the mid fives next year. And maybe that does bring in some new buyers that were on the fence. But I think for the most part, our business is back to a new normal. Mm-hmm. And we have to do the little things that contribute to our business and to grow our business, or even keep our business. And it is interesting to why business shifts. I'll tell you, for our perspective, we seem to be fairly steady, and then we'll rock along, and then we'll have, I guess this is true in I've got a good mortgage friend. She used to always talk about the slow months. She had an acronym for it. I can't remember what that was, but it was the January, February, March, or maybe December, January, February. But she was always making notes about, we've got to get it because those months are coming up and they're going to be lean months. And we'll always see that from time to time. We've been a little slower lately, and I don't know how much we attribute that to school start. And I kind of think that's probably part of it, but it's different for everyone. And it is different based on your sphere and your book of business and where it comes from and what external factors may be influencing that particular group of people. If you're a real estate agent who specializes in teachers, maybe you're a former teacher. And I've got several, realtor clients of mine that are former teachers or current teachers even, and they seem to have active books of business for teachers, which makes sense. And, right now they're probably pretty slow, with school starting back. So there's always an external factor that's going to impact, a certain small segment of the market. And, but I think, for the big picture standpoint, hopefully 2026 is continuing in the right path, and maybe we do see some rates that are lower, and that brings in some fresh blood to the market and new buyers and even move up buyers.
But honestly, even if it doesn't bring lower rates, hopefully we're going to see buyers who adjust to what this now normal is. Mm-hmm. So I recently posted. I was super proud of myself. I posted one of your rate sheets from about 1 year ago on a home, maybe 2 years ago now. Rates were low sixes. Yeah, they were pretty much exactly the same as what you're currently quoting today. And I found that super interesting. And I'm like, hey, all of you buyers who've been sitting on the fence, look, this was 2023. Now we're at 2025. Mm-hmm. What's the difference you're seeing? Have you continued to pay rent? Right. Or did you desire to have some equity and you were just holding on?
I know September of 2024, if I'm thinking correctly, we hit kind of a low point. We had a cut last year. If we remember the Fed cut rates, mortgage rates went the opposite way. Yeah. Which in a lot of cases, reminded us that the ends of the yield curves and things like that are divergent from one another, that Fed cutting rates, and there's going to be a lot of talk about Fed cutting rates in September, which I think is more than likely going to happen. We've seen mortgage rates move down in advance of that. So we've seen this last couple of weeks, mortgage rates kind of continue to improve. We're down back into the low sixes. I think that's exactly where we were in September of 2024. And we'll see what the Fed's commentary is going forward, which is probably going to shape longer term rates. See what happens with them. Do they continue to move down? Yeah, we're moving down a little bit now, but I don't know that we're going to see any drastic moves. There might be some pressure, depends on who wins politically, in some of these political battles that they, as far as pressure on the Fed. But in most cases, if the Fed moves another 0.25%, I think, rates move down just a little bit, but we'll go from there.
So here's a fun fact for you. Of all of the listings that I have, you've partnered with me on all of them with a rate sheet.
Yeah.
And Gracie's been phenomenal with those. Only one of my sellers is moving for fun, if you will. The rest of them are moving because they have been relocated, taken jobs elsewhere, whatever. They're not per se corporate relocation folks, but that is what is forcing them.
There's a life change.
So yeah, exactly. But finding the buyers to move into those homes has been a little bit more challenging.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I want to move on to something that I think you said to me in the past, and part of this, what we're doing is I certainly want to tell your story. And you have a mantra, and you may have forgotten that you told me this, but if not now, when?
Yeah.
And I know that some of that shaped both your personal life and your professional life. Yeah. And I know you've told me in the past that that mantra certainly pushed you into real estate. And I think that that's such a good reminder of things where challenges that we're facing or goals that we are trying to accomplish, but if not now, then when? And I'd like, can you talk a little bit about that and tell us kind of how that came about and how that influences you? Because it certainly stuck with me.
Interesting. Yeah, and I don't know that I necessarily remember telling you that, but it is something that I share anytime that someone asks me to share my story outside of real estate. Like, it's the stuff that you don't even know. But when somebody asks me to share that story, and I've been given that opportunity multiple times on multiple different platforms, and I just kind of share my story, and it's overwhelming for the audience typically to hear, and they wonder, how is she even still sitting here? Because so much has happened in the past, and medically. And I learned back in 2016, after a significant relapse, is when I really started to grasp that. If not now, then when? Because I feel like as a family of 4, so I'm married and we have 2 daughters, but in 2016, I was the primary for all of them. I was stay-home mom, driving them to private school every day. They weren't able to drive yet. They were still young. And we were living in a brand new state, a brand new city and town, and I relapsed. And I relapsed hard. To the point where we were just trying to figure things out one day at a time. But once we got over that hurdle, and we quickly did in the grand scheme of things, I took on this thought process of, if not now, then when? Because in the back of my mind, there was all these things that I always wanted to do. Like, and everybody thinks this to a degree. Like, when I get these kids out of college, this is what we're going to go do. When I get my next job promotion, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this trip, or I'm going to buy this dream car that I've always wanted. Or, hey, I always wanted to shift careers and go do this job. And I too had some of those in the back of my mind. And coming out of a surgery in 2017, we go to like a school fundraising auction, and that's kind of when all of this was still reeling in my mind. I still didn't even have I couldn't even drive yet. Like, I was still having to be a passenger princess in the car, which is so frustrating to me because I just am go. And we go to the school fundraising auction, and I didn't want any of the things that they had so far had. My husband's sitting there, and he's like, just keep your paddle on the table. Like, don't even raise the paddle. And all of a sudden, a trip to Kauai, a trip to Kauai came up on the auction table, and the auctioneer started at a certain amount or whatever, and there was a guy on the front row, and he's like, I'll do that. And then another lady in the back kind of bantered about it with him, and the two of them just kept going back and forth, and then it got down to like the final call or whatever, and I just picked the paddle up and I just raised it. And my husband looked at me, and he's like, put your arm down. And the auctioneer was like, okay, now we have a new one in. And turns out we won that trip. we paid for that trip. We didn't win that trip. We paid for that trip. We won.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really about the win for me at that moment. It was about going to make the memories. Yeah. It was like, you know what? Yeah. This savings account, this retirement account, all of this doesn't really matter at the end of the day if we're not doing anything with it that we really wanted to do. And it was 2017 when I started just like preaching that. If not now, then when? If not now, then when? Like, go eat the cake, buy the shoes, take the trip. You've seen those little signs all over places in town. But we took our family my mom and dad went with us. So there were 6 of us on that trip to Kauai. And had I never taken that mindset, we probably still wouldn't have traveled. And so ever since then, we've just changed the way we do life, even as a family, a little bit. And I'm like, my girls are older.
They're not old, but they're older.
Right. They're college graduates. Yeah. So we're not worried about like the Christmas morning at home scenario like many people are having to worry about. And now we just do stocking stuffers, and we are never at home. I probably shouldn't say this, but we're never at home on Christmas Day because we're taking the trip. We're taking the trip. Right. And it's those kind of things that I think taught me. It didn't teach me to value life more, but it showed me that I needed to do a better job making the memories and not trying to build the account.
Makes sense. Yeah, you took something, that was obviously a change in your life, and made something that's lasting, that is a positive change, not only you, but obviously your family, and it's a beautiful story. And I think it applies so well to not only our personal lives of whether, buying shoes or taking a trip or whatever else that you mentioned there. But I think it's also how, our relationships, our business, our goals, and to realize, how precious our time is, and that we only get certain number of opportunities to do what we want to do and to make the most of that time. And I just think it's a great reminder, and it's a great way to say it. If not now, then when? Because I'm guilty of it, and it speaks to me because, and running a business and having kids and doing all of those things, you make all these plans, and you're trying to organize it in a way that, especially for me, it has to, fit into a spreadsheet, and it all has to line up, and 1 + 1 always has to equal 2. And there's a certainly, or maybe the better way to say that is you do A and B and then C and D, and you go down this certain path. And that's not really what life's about. We're not in control. We're in control of certain things that, our attitudes and how we treat others, and our, things that we can control, and being mindful of those. And I think that kind of goes back to it. If not now, then when? Of thinking about that on a daily basis. And certainly our family has had, several instances, that should be those grand reminders of it. So it certainly hits home to me. And as a reminder, every time I kind of think about that, I do think about, you did tell me that story, and it stuck with me. It stuck with me. And I think that's one of the main inspirations that I draw from you and your friendship is that if not now, then when. So appreciate you sharing.
And I think like today, if not now, because we aren't guaranteed tomorrow. No. And a lot of our young people still think, hey, we're so invincible, whatever, but we're not.
No, we're not.
We're not.
We're not.
And these situations don't have to define somebody. My diagnoses did not define who I was, but they definitely shaped who I was.
Sure.
And I think gave me a greater appreciation at an early age, honestly, for life, the life that I want to live, the person that I want to be, and the friendships that I truly value and want to invest in. Mm-hmm. And I can be acquaintances with anybody, but who do I really want to invest in? And, it sounds cliche, but do life with regularly.
Yeah.
And once you find your team, your people, then I think there's value in it.
Yeah, well, we're glad to be a part of that, and then I want to segue that, and then and wrap up. Part of this podcast show, whatever we're calling this local supports local, and it's an idea that we've had. That is, I mean, obviously we're a local family-owned business.
I'm a local owned business.
You're a local enterprise.
I'm just an independent.
You're a local independent enterprise.
That's right.
But we want to, in a way, not only to grow our business, but to connect with the community and connect with, other people inside of our city, especially Memphis. And our name is Local Mortgage for a reason. And trying to serve a broader purpose, and to not only connect those for some business reasons, but this local supports local idea is something that we've put together, and something that we are passionate about growing. And this is certainly a platform that we want to do that with. And this tie-in with the podcast that I'm going to be doing, and the interviews and talking to people, are people that have a great connection to certain organizations and institutions, and certainly with your story with St. Jude. And what we would like to do is to, as this airs and as we do this, we would like to help raise some money, for your cause. And I know St. Jude is big in your heart. And has played a huge role in your story, and I've certainly met a few of your friends from those days,
sure
which I thought was beautiful, and so what we would like to do is, and I don't even know quite how we're going to do this, but we're going to create a small fundraiser on your behalf, and any listeners to these episodes and these clips, there'll be a link, no matter what platform you're listening on, should be a link to donate in your name, and then we're going to match up to a certain dollar amount of that in your name to go towards St. Jude. So we appreciate your story, and certainly want to connect with that.
People who live in Memphis don't know about that hospital.
I'm guilty of it. So you and I sat through a chamber meeting, and I was blown away at what I didn't know that they were doing.
Okay.
And you talk about is it $15 billion investment? I may have my number wrong.
And growing daily, right?
It may be. And I think at the time, I remember the number 15 billion. I hope I'm not pulling that out of the air, but of a infrastructure to the campus. And I don't, we're in East Memphis. I live in Germantown. I don't go downtown regularly. But you do go by and you see all of the development, and you can see what's going on there. And I was able to listen and hear about some of those plans, and it's inspiring for so many reasons, obviously for what they do, but the goals that they have are, insanely audacious. And
100% cure rate is one of the goals for leukemia patients, and they're so close to what they want.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder of something that is so big and so powerful, that's doing so much good, and not just here in the United States. That was one thing that it just reminded me of what a global impact, and their global initiative to cure and to increase those cure rates to 100% globally.
Yeah.
And they gave some statistics on what those cure rates are globally.
And they're sad.
They're sad.
They're sad.
Yeah, sad.
What I would want your listeners to know about St. Jude is that not only does the money go to the research aspect, which is grossly important, but each of those families who walks in that door, they don't pay a dime.
Mm-hmm.
And my family was the beneficiary of that, for sure. So I don't take for granted, like, everybody's donations. I used to watch, before I was diagnosed, I would watch the St. Jude shows that would air at night. And I just remember crying because all the stories were just so sweet. And I first began my St. Jude journey in 1989. So I've been a patient there since I was age 11. Mm-hmm. With St. Jude, once a patient, always a patient. They never let you go. And every time they bring you back for something, it's 100% covered, not by your insurance, but because of donations of people who've chosen to give.
I don't think people realize that. I think that I certainly didn't realize the fact that obviously through the pediatrics, wing there, I did not realize that as an adult that care continued.
Well, so they don't treat you as an adult. They eventually release you. Okay. So what they are using, like what they would study me on now is what are the side effects that I currently have from the treatments that I was given back then, so that we don't maybe affect somebody that we're given that same regimen to now. Yeah. And can we narrow down what drug caused what? Yeah. To try to save your life. Yeah. And then they're asking the big questions, about family and like, did those drugs affect me so much that I couldn't have children? Because that is true for so many. But that's what these monies go towards. It just like keeps going and going and going. And as you know, with all of my closings, I give a portion of that, a small donation back to the hospital because I believe in it.
Sure. I know you do.
I believe in it. There is me and 2 other girls, and we had the opportunity to walk out of those doors. But I remember I went to 5 funerals within the walls of that place. And we would drive to Louisiana, for some of those, because so many people from Louisiana find their way up here for whatever reason. But, so any donation is so appreciated and just really used wisely, I think.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can help with some of that, and you're an inspiration to us and your story, and I'm certainly happy we got a chance to share it, and hopefully we can do some good with that.